I had a splendid voice. In fact, I'd sing in opera if they'd give me my choice. I wrote to Oscar Hammerstein that I would be his star. He said, come down and sing for me, and I'll see how good you are. And I don't suppose I'll do it again for months and months and months. No, I don't suppose I'll do it again for months and months and months. I sang the wise old owl, and he left the room at once. So I don't suppose I'll do it again for months and months and months.
Welcome to episode 4. My guest this week is Dave Sperling. For the first time in the entire series of the Recluse's Cookbook, we career off into a totally new direction, the world of English language teaching. It has exploded, and with each passing year, it grows stronger and stronger. My guest Dave Sperling found his way into the world of TEFL and Tesol teaching back in the early 80s, and since then, he has continued in the industry to great success. Most notably, he created Dave's ESL Cafe. This website holds listings for English language teaching vacancies across the world, and is a must for any newly graduated TEFL or Tesol teacher. In this episode, Dave talks about how he fell into teaching, the beginning of Dave's ESL Cafe, and what he's at today. You can find out more on the link in the podcast description. If you like what you hear, please like it, and if you know anyone who would be interested in anything in this episode, please send them a link. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, here's Dave Sperling.
Okay, so Dave, can you tell us what it is that you are best known for?
I'm best known for my website, which is Dave's ESL Cafe or eslcafe.com. And I guess it's one of the better known, maybe one of the oldest websites that focuses specifically on ESL, EFL. I'm probably best known now, even though the website has transformed over the years and changed into different directions. I'm probably best known as a job site. So people from around the world, potential, mostly teachers, would go to my website to look for teaching jobs overseas in different countries.
Okay, so you mentioned the two categories there, EFL and ESL. Can you explain what EFL and ESL are first?
I can. Yeah, ESL stands for English as a Second Language. And ESL is normally what is taught. For example, I'm in America, and if I was to teach foreign students English here in my country, that would be considered ESL, English as a foreign language, which would be, if I went, for example, to Japan to teach English, that would be considered EFL, English as a foreign language. But these days, actually, people normally just say ESL. So, it's kind of interchangeable. I'm just kind of old school from my background, so I kind of differentiate. I guess part of the reason is I don't want to get criticized for just, if I say ESL, people say, hey, that's not ESL, we teach EFL. But the reality is that most of the time, the most common word that people use is ESL. So, so I'm kind of like, I consider myself like an ESL website.
Okay. And your website effectively is it's like a big jobs forum for ESL or EFL jobs.
Yeah, there's more to it than that. I haven't looked at my site in a while. I should probably look at it. Well, it's divided into, I have just, the site is more than that. So I have, for example, student sections, where the student sections have material specifically written for students that are learning English as a second or foreign language. So I have, areas where they can learn idioms and phrasal verbs and slang and grammar lessons and so on. So I have a section for students. And then I also have, of course, sections for teachers, which is probably where the site dominates. Aside from the jobs, which I'll get to in a minute, I have, what do I have on that? I have lesson plans, for example. So if teachers wanted to come up with an idea on how to, some activity or some ideas to use in the classroom, they can go to that section of the site. What else do I have for teachers? Good question. I don't often peruse my site, but for teachers, including, which I've just opened up about a month ago, I call it the Dave's ESL Cafe blog, where I put my experience as a teacher for many, many years, my background in ESL, and I write articles specifically for example, like what it's like to teach in Japan or Thailand, or where the best paying countries are. So that's another section for teachers, which is my personal blog. And then getting to the jobs, which now people know me best, I have 3 job boards, one for South Korea, one for China, and another one that covers the rest of the world. I call that the International Job Board. And there's about 550 ads that have been posted over the past 30 days. We're definitely down since, COVID hit. I'm slowly climbing back up again. Pre-COVID, there were probably twice that many ads, jobs per month, like about 1,000. But still, 550 jobs over 30 days is still a sizable number.
And these jobs, are they like the same? Obviously they're different countries, but the same type of job, or the jobs themselves? What's the variance of them, or is there much of a variance between them, or is it like a very similar kind of job posting for each entry that goes on your website?
Yeah, there's a variety. I mean, the common theme. I mean, even though there are different types of jobs, the common denominator mostly is looking for teachers of English. English has become the global language, and so there's quite a need for people to learn English, especially in countries where they don't quite have a great English educational system in their public or even perhaps even private schools. Of course, we don't have ads for places like Holland or Denmark or Norway, where people speak English really, really well, maybe better than me. But in countries like China and South Korea and most of the world, Latin America, even many parts of Europe, like Spain or Italy, there is a need for English language teachers. Now, with that said, I do get ads for other languages as well. So there's ads that are looking specifically for French teachers or Spanish teachers. Sometimes there's different subjects, like looking for mathematics, or sometimes, I get some strange jobs. I think I had a job that was looking for like a scuba instructor, but to teach it in English, Yeah. So sometimes there are activities, like even I'm looking for an English-speaking soccer coach, or soccer, of course, is football, where you come from. Yeah. So sometimes I'll get ads like that. Sometimes it's for like broadcasting ads. We're looking for somebody, with a great voice, or actors. Sometimes I get ads for looking for people with an acting background. Right. So, so there are, again, that's not the norm. The norm really is foreign languages, specifically English.
Yeah. So how did the idea for the website come about, Dave? How did it all start?
How did it all start? Well, first I was born. I conceived. How did it start? Well, it started with my background. I think, like, even when I talk to people that want to start a website, I tell them, do something that you are passionate about, something you know about. And prior to beginning Dave's ESL Cafe, which I started in 1995, yeah. I first started teaching English in Japan in 1985. So when I started the website, I had a decade of experience. In addition to, I had just completed my master's degree in um, linguistics, teaching English as a second language. So I had the background. And when I was in graduate school between 1993 and 1995, I began to be interested in technology and the internet, which was just, I don't want to say it was in its early stages because it goes back many years before that, but I'd say it was kind of the beginning of when the average person was starting to use the internet, and I found it really fascinating. I loved it, so I started using that in graduate school, and then in 1995, it had really started changing drastically, where it was becoming the internet, somewhat of the internet that we know now, not quite. Now we have the internet in our pockets with our mobile phones and so on, our cell phones. But it was going from something that was, how can I say it? It was somewhat esoteric, where you were having to type in commands. So if I wanted to communicate with you, I mean, I couldn't even conceive in 1995 or 1993 of doing what we're doing now. It was like, yeah, this wasn't even conceivable. So most of the communication was done just through like texting, like just kind of this, we called it telnet, and you telnet into somebody and you would just type stuff. And I thought that was really fantastic. I mean, I was able to communicate not just through email, but instantly with my friends around the world and throughout the United States. But in 1995, it started to become more like the World Wide Web as we know it, where you had actually, I don't know if you'd call them websites, they were more like web pages. Yeah. I guess there were sites, but there were individual pages. And that's what I started to create. I started to learn the language of the web. Well, I guess there's probably many languages now. I'm not that knowledgeable on programming, but at that time I was learning something called HTML, which is Hypertext Markup Language. And I was learning that and experimenting, and that was the beginning of Dave's ESL Cafe.
When it started in 1995, was it a slow build, or did it kind of come very quickly to you?
Well, the site itself, yeah, the site itself came pretty quickly. And again, I kept adding pages, not just, this was 96, 97, 98, 99. I'd throw away parts of it, add stuff. And so it was always being modified. But it started coming really quickly because, well, first of all, I was in my 30s. I was young. So I had all this energy, youthful energy. And it was exciting and it was new. And I was getting a lot of feedback from, immediate feedback from people that were looking at the site. So, the actual site itself came pretty quickly. The other reason it came pretty fast was I was an adjunct teacher at a university. An adjunct essentially I was a full-time, part-time teacher. In other words, I was teaching full-time without any of the benefits. Yeah. So when it came wintertime, the program closed down for 6 weeks, but we were allowed to go on unemployment. In fact, they encouraged it. They said, okay, you're off 6 weeks, go on unemployment. They signed everything. So I was getting a paycheck from the government every week. And it was like, well, this is great. I didn't make as much as I was teaching, but it paid my rent, or, most of it. And so it was kind of like a 6-week work vacation where I was able to kind of put this whole thing together. And I had so many individual pages that I had to consolidate them. And that's how I came up with Dave's ESL Cafe, like one menu that would kind of get them everywhere. And, Dave, because I'm Dave, ESL, because English is a second language, and Cafe, again, it was part of it, there's a menu. Here's the menu, how to go to the different pages. And Cafe also was kind of like a meeting place for me. People meet up in cafes. And that's how I kind of came up with the name Dave's ESL Cafe. And as far as how quickly it became known, that also happened pretty quickly because, again, it's not like what year are we in? 2023, where it's hard to create a web page, a blog, or a website or whatever, and get known, or even if it's a YouTube video or whatever you're doing, or a podcast. There's just so much out there. It's just almost not quite infinite, but seems that way. But back in 1995, 96, it was really easy to get noticed. It wasn't difficult at all because there just wasn't much content out there. So the time that I realized that I was really starting to make an impact and people were knowing about my website was in March of 1996. I was invited to Chicago for the TESOL, the International Teachers. What does TESOL? Well, we call it TESOL, Teachers of Others. I'm going to get nailed for this because I don't even know. I'm not going to attempt to tell you what TESOL means because I'm not awake enough this morning to tell you. But it's the international conference that they have once a year in different parts of the world. I think parts of the world, parts of the United States anyway, maybe parts of the world. But anyways, I went to this TESOL conference and, had my name, Dave Sperling, Dave's ESL Cafe, and so many people came up to me, and it was like shocking. I had never experienced anything like that. And I realized that, from just January, February, and a couple of weeks of March, I was known to so many people, specifically targeted, not globally. I wasn't, I wasn't like walking on the Chicago signing autographs or that paparazzi taking photos of me. But, within the world of, TESOL, English as a second language, it was great. I go, wow, people are really noticing this website. And again, that was encouragement tends to motivate you to keep going, keep working at it. And that's what happened. So, I just kept going.
And how did you find your way into the TESOL or the TEFL? I generally find this with most, because this is what I do for a living.
Right.
I do it, and I came from it from a very roundabout. This was not on the cards until I did it, and then I went, oh, where has this been in my life the entire time? Right. I generally tend to find people who are long-term in it have a very, very interesting connection with it. So how did you get involved with it, Dave? Was this already on the cards for you, or was this something that you fell into?
Definitely something I fell into. I don't think teaching English abroad was. Now it's become somewhat mainstream. If you mention to somebody that they'll say, "Oh, I have a friend or a cousin, or I'm here right now in San Francisco, and I've had conversations with people that have taught in different countries," and that didn't really happen in 19 what? Well, let's go back. So I graduated from college in 1982, and I have a degree in psychology, and I couldn't do anything with a degree in psychology. I learned a lot, but I couldn't get a job. And it was also a difficult time economically. And so, so I ended up a job as a driver. I was a courier, which I'm not putting down. It was a great job. And I did that for 2 years, and I loved it. I was delivering. It's like it's a job that is now obsolete. I was working for a corporate travel agency where I was delivering airline tickets to companies. Well, airline tickets don't exist anymore. And most of the time, if anybody, even if it's a corporation, there'll be somebody who's just in charge of going online and booking a ticket themselves. It's something that didn't exist. But in 1983, 84, at the times that I was doing this, it was it was exciting. I was rushing out to, IBM to deliver tickets so that they could get to wherever the heck they were going halfway across the world. Well, I was working in downtown Los Angeles, and there was a bookstore called Kinokuniya, which is I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's a big Japanese bookstore where they have locations there's even locations here in San Francisco, but many countries, and certainly in Japan, it's probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest bookstore. And I was downtown during the lunch break, and I popped in there and went to the English section, not the Japanese section, and I found I found a book called Jobs in Japan, and I go, well, that's cool. So I looked at the book and I bought the book, and they were talking about all the different things that you could do working in Japan. Not English was kind of the main part, but there were all kinds of things you could do, like like bartending jobs, or if you were a nice, attractive woman, you could work as in a hostess club, and they had a whole list of all different things that you could do over there, and the pay was like a lot more than I was making as a courier, and I wanted to change. I felt that I was, I wanted to do something more with my degree that I had, the 4 years that I spent at university. So the area that rang out was teaching English as a second language, and I just quit my job and bought a ticket, flew to Japan, and just started. On Monday they had the Japan Times, which listed all the jobs. Monday was the edition in the classified section to find jobs, and it was March of 1985. I just remember in those early days, freezing my butt off at a payphone with the newspaper. There were of course no cell phones, so I'd be in a payphone just freezing. It was not an enclosed payphone. Set up job interviews. And anyways, that was the beginning. And I ended up pretty quickly getting a job. And I ended up probably a total of about 4 or 5 years teaching in Japan. So I fell into it.
Yeah. It's amazing the amount of people who are long term in the career. People, it was never on the cards. It was just something, I'll do it, and they've never left it. So you started 4 or 5 years in Japan. Did you work and live in other countries doing it, or was it?
I did. Yeah, I started. Japan was kind of done in 2 different segments. So the first segment was up until 1988. And then I left. I took a vacation. The story's a lot more complicated than what I'm telling. It goes into my personal life and, in relationships and, all of that stuff, which I'm not going to go into now. But just we'll call it the simplified version of what happened was in 1988, I took a trip over to Thailand. So I was kind of going through a meltdown in Tokyo. I was working hard. The Japanese work very hard. There's this real incredible work ethic, and I was just totally burned out. There were some days I was working from teaching businessmen at 7 before work. So some of it was like 7 a.m. classes, and finishing my teaching at like 10 a.m., doing a 9 to 10 p.m. class. And then, then you'd be all wound up and you wouldn't get to bed till 1 a.m. or so. You have to get up again at 5:30 to teach the 7 o'clock class. I was burned out. So I had met people that had been to Thailand, and they said, take off, go over there for a little while. I had Thai friends over there as well. So I flew to Bangkok, met my Thai friends from university, fell in love with the country. I mean, I spent 3 weeks just traveling all over the place. And decided to take a year off and not teach, just be a vagabond. Well, that's not quite it. It wasn't really a vagabond. I wanted to take 1 year off. I call it like a sabbatical. It's more because I wasn't really a vagabond. I rented a house, bought a motorcycle, and spent a year pursuing hobbies that I had abandoned, like photography and writing. And what else was I doing? Music. I had missed out on a lot of music. I'm not a musician, but I missed out on, a lot of music. I was too busy working and didn't have time to really keep up with what was going on in the music scene, during the 1980s. So I, caught up on music and travel and all of that stuff. During that year, I also spent time with family. I met my dad in New Zealand, and we toured New Zealand and Australia together for a month. And I had family come visit me in Thailand. I studied Thai. It was a great year. And by the end of the year, I married someone from Thailand. So at 1989, I got married. So I still have very deep roots and ties in that country. But going back to the teaching, yes, I've taught in three, really, I guess you can say four countries, but predominantly three countries. Japan, Thailand, which I spent maybe 3 or 4 years teaching up in the north in Chiang Mai. The USA, of course, I taught all different type of courses here in the U.S., from refugees to university classes. And then on a trip to Vietnam, I did some volunteer teaching. I don't really like to count that because it was more like a working vacation, and I taught some classes on a 2-week holiday. But I did anyways have the experience of actually doing some, teaching. Oh, and if I want to add one more country, I did volunteer teaching in Laos as well with my kids. I took my son and my daughter, and we trekked through Laos, and we did all three of us did volunteer English teaching when we were over there. So, yeah.
There's a lot there, because I suppose I'm looking at it from a different, very, very different point of view. I've come to this nearly 40 years down the line, where
Right.
do you think it's changed much, the idea of the TESL or the TEFL teacher, say back then compared to what it is now? Has there been a significant change between the two?
Yeah, definitely. I think teachers are more qualified now. I think if you go back, they would take anybody who even looked Western. So it could be like someone from Argentina. Now, I'm not putting that down, because there are non-native English speakers that speak English very well, and there are opportunities for them to teach. But I had met people that definitely English. And we didn't really have much of an idea of qualifications. So I had a university degree, and at that time, that's what I needed to teach English in Japan. It's probably still the case. But there were still many, many, many countries where you didn't even need a university degree. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is, as I said previously, it's become more well-known and somewhat mainstream to teach English overseas. And, back when I started, I was looked at by my friends and family as kind of a freak. It wasn't something you were supposed to do. I was supposed to, after college, get a job and, work in an office. And, it was not, people really had no comprehension of teaching or working in another country. So that's a big part of it. And I think, the internet, of course, has really been a big impetus for that, because there's just incredible amount of information. As an example, I didn't teach in Saudi Arabia, but I almost did. And so in the early 90s, I was offered a job from Saudia, which is the Saudi Arabian airline. So that's another type of job that I get on my website for teaching pilots and flight attendants and so on. So I was offered a job to teach in Saudi Arabia, but I couldn't find, there was like no information, even though there was internet, you still couldn't find, it wasn't like now where it's so easy to not just find information about what it's like to work in Saudi Arabia, but you can connect with people. You can actually connect with people that are teaching over there, and even doing what we're doing now, like a FaceTime audio, a FaceTime, whatever we call it, video. But then it was really difficult for me. I was tracking down, like calling my friends here and say, oh, do you know anyone who's taught in Saudi Arabia? Oh yeah, I have a friend I have a friend that worked for an oil company. So I'd call him and get some information. What is it like to work over there? What are the compounds like? How is it? What are the do's and don'ts? And so, it's a huge difference between then and now, because just the access to information it's just there. People want to teach abroad. Just there's so much out there online to be able to not just to get a job, but to research and find out, the good.
You kind of really taken us through that. You mentioned 1995 and web pages. I call them websites, but as soon as you said web page, I kind of went, my God, we have changed so much in 30 years. And then you mentioned that thing of back in the early 80s at a phone box, putting money into it I never really thought of that it's all at our fingertips now with regards.
It is, and well, now it's even really. I most of the time, I've moved from running my website with my laptop with a computer to being able to run everything through my phone, everything. So it's like, well, I'm doing this on an iPad, this podcast, which, but generally, I don't need to open up my computer anymore. I mean, for many, many years, that's what I had to do. I was I guess you'd call myself a digital nomad. I kind of worked all over the world with Dave's ESL Cafe. Always had to have my laptop, and now my running my business is in my pocket. I can be in the bathroom and post job ads. So it's really changed. Not to mention the technology, of course, the video conferencing. There's so much we can go into, just how much everything's just changed. Not to mention YouTube. That's a whole nother phenomenon. So YouTube, aside from being able to access, of course, information and videos about teaching abroad, with YouTube, I use it for everything. Like I was I drove from Los Angeles to San Francisco earlier in the week. What day are we in? Yeah, earlier in the week. And I have a Honda CR-V, and I have something called, what is it called? It's called, it's called adaptive cruise control. And do you know what adaptive cruise control is? Adaptive cruise control is when you can set it at a particular speed, and it'll go as fast or as slow as, for example, the car in front of you. So if the car in front of you slows down, it'll automatically slows down. If it speeds up, it'll speed up. And it even has assisted steering. It's not quite self-driving, but it's pretty darn good, especially if you have a 6-hour drive on a highway. Well, somehow I messed up and I hit some button where I turned that off, and I couldn't figure how to turn it back on again. So all I had to do was just pull over, YouTube how to turn on adaptive cruise control on my Honda, and there it was on YouTube. Within like 3 minutes, I was able to figure out something that I couldn't figure out how to do. I didn't know how to do it. So just even in terms of learning how to do things, and of course, then we get into the idea of even learning languages. And so my daughter, as an example, who's half Thai, she studies Thai online with a Thai teacher, and she has a Thai teacher that is based in Thailand, and they work out the time difference, and she's learned a tremendous amount of language learning online.
It really is amazing. It doesn't seem real, to be quite honest with you, the amount of information at our fingertips.
Right, I agree.
For anyone that is listening, that is interested in, say, pursuing the TEFL or the ESL career path, what are the benefits of doing something like this? Now, I could tell you them from my point of view, but I think they'd be more interested from the point of view of someone who's been at it or at least involved in it for nearly 40 years. How does it benefit your life? And is there kind of like transferable skills that you can take from it and bring to other jobs, or whatever you think yourself?
Yeah, well, what does it bring? It certainly brings a cultural awareness and an open mind. So, working abroad, spending so many years abroad, I have a different perspective than somebody perhaps who's never left their suburb, of Los Angeles, someone who's kind of been in a bubble. What I can transfer out of that is an openness to just the diversity of the places here in the United States that I live. So I'm, I just, for me, I'm passionate about, like, I'm here in San Francisco and there's a really large Chinese population. And after this, I will take my dog, Charlie, who's asleep somewhere, and we'll walk over to Chinatown and just, because I have a background of living in Asia, I just kind of just suck it up and just breathe in the diversity. Same with Los Angeles, where I also live. Just this passion and interest in languages and foods and music as well, like, because I've lived abroad. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to live abroad to have an appreciation or a passion for all of this, but I think it's brought this out in me. So I love global music. I spend time exploring music that comes from different parts of Africa or the Middle East, and so on. What it's given me is just, I guess I wouldn't be who I am if I hadn't had those years and those experiences and those adventures, living abroad. Well, first of all, I wouldn't be married to someone from Thailand. I wouldn't have had that for the past 35 years, just having Thailand kind of in me, just going back and forth and family and friends and all of that. But then there's just the experiences, the impact that I've made teaching students, and just the satisfaction of, kind of what I've done. It's a worthwhile job. I'm not hurting anybody. I'm benefiting the world. So I don't think I thought of it that way when I was doing it. It's only looking back as somebody now in my 60s that looking back of saying, yeah, I did some good. I had a positive impact on people, in different countries. But for me, it's just that richness that those experiences, the places that I've been, and a lot of that too is travel. And so if somebody, of course, doesn't want to teach abroad, you can get a lot of that again through travel, and that's another thing that I'm passionate about. The difference about living abroad is developing roots. It's when you're traveling, it's hard to kind of make solid friendships and relationships and so on. Of course you can, but when you're living in a place, you really get to know that place. So when I lived in Tokyo, I really got to know Tokyo. I got to know all its streets and restaurants and shopkeepers and people and festivals and all of that stuff. And as it went around in a year, I would know, okay, it's cherry blossom time, and these are the events that happen. Now it's summertime and it's hot and it's humid. There's the beer gardens are open, and when the fall comes and certain activities that happen in the fall, and you just really get to know the culture and start to make friends both expat friends, like fellow English teachers or people that live in that particular place, friends that I'm. So when am I now? Like you were saying, like 40 years later, just about that I'm still friends with these people that I met so many years ago. And as well as the natives, can I say, the people that are from that particular country. So I still have very good friends that I met, Japanese friends in Japan and Thai friends from Thailand and so on. So there's so much, but for me, I think the most important thing is just this. It's a broadening of the mind. I think, I think it's incredible broadening of the mind of what the world is about and its diversity and an appreciation of it.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, the broadening and awareness. When you engage and encounter people from different cultures, it just really enriches your global perspective. I have found I before I got involved with it, I knew obviously there was
Mm-hmm.
I knew there was different places in the world, but
Right.
as to who was in them or what was in them, I had no idea. The last 2 years of doing the TESOL teaching here in Dublin has been an absolute blast. And it got me hooked very, very
Mhm.
quickly because I know that every 3 months there'll be a new student coming through the door and I can find out just a little bit more about their background and culture
Right.
than what I knew before. Um, but I suppose the question I would have for you now, Dave, is you painted the starting of your TEFL career in back in the
Mhm.
1980s with the phone box, and then you moved
Mhm.
very you painted another great picture of the web pages in the 90s, and
Mhm.
I can still hear the dial tone. Remember the dial tone that used to come up when you clicked it?
Yeah.
Yeah, as soon as you said it, where do you see the English language sector go in the future, say next 5 years or maybe even 10 years?
Well, I think we're going to go right now. We're post COVID, so COVID really had quite a detrimental impact on a lot of things, and certainly on teaching abroad because, uh, well, first of all, you had a pandemic, and so schools closed down, travel shut down. So, like, I'm off to Thailand with my daughter in a couple of weeks, and I haven't been back in 4 years, and so I was there 4 years ago, and then not long after that, COVID hit, and Thailand just completely shut down. So the first thing we have to kind of get through is get through post COVID. The world, like here in the U.S., and I don't know how it is in Ireland. For the most part, you don't really. It feels like it's over, like COVID is over. I mean, there's still COVID, um, and there's times when I'm supposed to wear a mask, like if I go to a hospital or something like that. There are some occasions, but generally it feels over. And so and now the world of teaching abroad and travel, of course, is starting to bounce back. Where what direction is it going? Well, in some ways it's not going anywhere. It's some ways in some ways, there's a teacher, there's a group of students, there's a country. In some ways, it's the same as how it was 25 years ago. I mean, the actual idea of just getting in front of a classroom and, teaching a language, is something you probably can go back 100 years ago. And, I mean, the methodology and the research and so on has changed, the knowledge of second language acquisition and so on. But where was I going with that? But yeah, so the actual idea of teaching that stays the same. Now, with that said, there'll probably be, hopefully, a growing opportunity. There'll be an increase. I don't see teaching English as an area that's going to decrease. So it's something that really should be that should increase the opportunities, and even as I've seen, not even projecting 5 years ago, but seeing in the last 5 years, is just seeing opportunities in countries that are just, it's almost everywhere. It's almost shocking to see, like, some of the places that I get job ads for, that I would have never had these ads, certain many of years ago. I would have never had them. Now, another area, of course, that has boomed because of COVID is online teaching. And so online teaching, I don't think it might take a slice out of traditional face-to-face classroom teaching. But I don't see it replacing it. And as you know, as a teacher, it's just not the same. It's not the same as just being there. You just can't develop the kind of relationships with your students or the culture and so on. So I don't. But with that said, there's certainly going to be a lot more opportunities for learning a language or teaching a language online. So what that means for a teacher, so it means that it is possible to be a digital nomad teaching English online. So that is one area. It's hard to say, I can't project 5 years, but it's something that probably you could do right now, which is something that you didn't have previously. Because of COVID, there's many more opportunities to teach English online. So as for me, I consider myself one of the very first digital nomads. So I stopped teaching English at the university in 1999. So from the year 2000 up to now, 2023, I've been able to work anywhere in the world. Internet, as long as I had internet, which now we just take for granted because we have internet in our pocket. But it means that, and people were very envious of me. So it was like, oh, that's really fantastic. You mean you can? I would tell them, I took trips to Spain, and I was in England and all over Asia. Worked, traveled everywhere, and I ran my website from all over the world, from 33,000 feet, whatever that is, meters. We're stuck in feet here in the U.S., but on an air jet, I've run my website from LA to Tokyo, 35,000 feet up in the air. And now it's actually possible for people to do that as an online teacher. And I think that's actually really exciting. So it means that I say, yeah, that's really cool. I'm going to rent a place in Thailand for 3 months. Well, I don't know if Thailand. I guess if you're in Thailand, you might as well teach in Thailand. But let's think of another location. But but what it means is you can kind of pick inexpensive locations in different countries, and just work in a coffee shop with your laptop, with just your earphones and your microphone, and I think that's one way where it's going. It's hard to predict. It's hard to predict. I am interested in just things that are happening future-wise. I think that artificial intelligence it's hard to say where it's going to lead with language learning. But certainly, I'm here in San Francisco, and I'm among a lot of tech people here, and we don't even, the average person doesn't even have a clue the potential of AI. I mean, what we see and use now is not even really, it's like years behind what they actually have, what's released. So again, artificial intelligence and AI will also somehow play some kind of role for the teacher and for the students. I'm just not savvy enough to know exactly, where that's
okay. So what advice, someone who wants to get involved in the TEFL or Tesol teaching, what would be the best advice you'd give that person who wants to get involved?
Well, the first thing is do your homework. First, decide whether it's something you really want to do. It's not for everybody. I think that, you do have to be a people person. Not everybody is, I have even family that, they're not comfortable face to face with people. They're not people, they're not people. Yeah, they're people, but they're not people. So, so first you have to decide if you have the personality for it. And even if you don't, like, let's say you're shy, you might surprise yourself and you might find, hey, wow, I'm shy, but wow, I'm pretty good at this. But first deciding whether it's for you. You want to do your homework, you want to go online, and you want to research what it's like to teach. Go to my blog. A blog that I have is actually a really good place to go to find out what it's like. I have a really comprehensive FAQ for teachers that want to teach abroad. The most important thing in the beginning is to become as knowledgeable as you can, to learn about what it's like. And then once you've decided that's something you want to do, then you start to narrow down perhaps the countries that you want to live in. You have to decide, is it something that I'm looking for to make money? Is it maybe I have student loans and I want to pay off student loans, or I want to save up money to buy a home, or I just got married and we're a couple and we want to work abroad to save money so that when we come back to our home country, we have a bit of a nest egg. So you start to research countries that pay the best. Some people are just looking for countries for that, but just that are fun to live in, that can pay the rent. They might want to teach in Thailand or Cambodia or some country where they're not going to make a lot of money, but it's going to really enrich their lives. They're going to have a really incredible experience and meet just fantastic people and just soak up the culture. And then some people just might be more attracted to a particular country. So some people might say, "Oh, I've always wanted to work in Spain or Italy or be more European based," or like in my case, I've always had a love of Asia. So you start to research and discover where you'd like to teach. And once you narrow that down, then you learn everything you can about, for example, like Japan. I want to teach in Japan. So you learn everything you can, maybe connect with teachers that are teaching over there, decide on where in Japan you want to teach. You want to teach in an urban center like Tokyo or Osaka, someplace historical like Kyoto, or maybe some place out in the boonies like some island. There are island teaching jobs in Japan, as an example, where you can just do something that's just totally off the wall, but, depending on your personality, may be fantastic. So then you start to look for the jobs. So, compared to when we talked about a phone box or a payphone, as we call it here, it's different now. So now you can go online. As Dave's ESL Cafe is one example, but there's other sites as well that a person can Google to find jobs. And you start looking around for jobs, you start doing interviews, you do your research to make sure that it's a legitimate school, that perhaps the school has a good reputation, maybe connect with teachers that are currently teaching or have taught in that school. That's kind of the process. And then, of course, there's which I strongly, strongly recommend, people getting certified to teach. It's not always necessary. A lot of times you just need your degree. But I know from someone who started teaching without knowing anything, I was really at a disadvantage. I was just really winging it. I mean, I got in front of a group of students and I was trying to teach, this is a noun, this is a pronoun. I really didn't know what it was. I had no idea. It was like, oh my God, I made a lot of mistakes in the first months, and just kind of, luckily I'm a pretty quick learner and had people help me in a curriculum. Finally got into a school that had a curriculum. And but when I went back, I did it in reverse. So after I taught so many years, then I went and got TEFL certified and did a master's degree. And then when I went back into teaching, which was 95, so I taught 95 to 99, it was like night and day in terms of my ability to teach and my knowledge. So I really strongly recommend that if anybody does want to teach abroad, regardless of whether they have a university degree or not, to get TEFL certified, because that will really, really help them in the classroom.
So that wraps up this episode. A big thank you to Dave Sperling for taking time out of his busy schedule to talk to me. If you've enjoyed the episode, please like and share it with anyone who you think might be interested in its contents. We're back next Friday with a brand new episode. Until then, you've been listening to The Recluse's Cookbook, and I'm your host, Vinnie McHale.
My mother always told me that I had a splendid voice. In fact, I'd sing in opera if they'd give me my choice. I wrote to Oscar Hammerstein that I would be his star. He said, come down and sing for me. and I'll see how good you are. And I don't suppose I'll do it again for months and months and months. No, I don't suppose I'll do it again for months and months and months. I sang the wise old owl, and he left the room at once. So I don't suppose I'll do it again for months and months and months.